Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live.
Hey, everyone. Hope you all are doing today. And I'm Kobe Lambert from the podiumfinish.net here with Joe Samniego. We had 9 races in 5 days across the globe to cover today, plus additional races including Penske 8 wide.
Hello, everyone. Joe Samniego here. Getting ready to start a busy day of IndyCar racing. Kobe, I know a little bit of everything. What was some of your initial thoughts with the IndyCar race?
The IndyCar race, we definitely saw a lot of strategy during the 2 days. Saw the undercut a lot, and it really worked out well. The Firestone tires produced a lot of tire fall off on the surface of Iowa Speedway. We saw some really interesting strategies. The undercut. Since there was a massive fall off in speed, the teams called the drivers in to pit early, and then they were able to gain a ton of track position while they were maybe like 15 to 20 miles per hour faster on drivers on older tires. And it really didn't matter where you started in this race because you could have been outside the top 10, top 15, and still finish well inside the top 5. And it was really crazy during race 1 at Iowa when Simon Pagenaud went from 23rd, dead last on the grid, all the way to win the race. And yeah, and definitely the undercut strategy was a fun one to watch. Apparently, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties tonight. And yeah, and what? Yeah, and I mentioned, the undercut strategy was definitely one to watch, and also want to point out, shout out to Connor Daly and Carlin Racing for doing an excellent job with with everything this week. Connor won the pole for race 1 and then started third in race 2. Connor got a great finish in race 1. Unfortunately, race 2 just didn't work out from them. And now looking at the qualifying format that we had to deal with, it was quite unique to see at Iowa Speedway. And there's Joe back. Oh, Joe, I was just talking about the qualifying format at Iowa, where it was quite unique. Where for race 1, we were able to, the drivers were able to, like on lap 1, they were able to qualify for race 1, and then on their second qualifying lap, that set the grid for race 2. and I just thought that was a really unique format. And if we do any more double headers on ovals in the future, I think that's certainly something that I like to see moving forward. I also think it could work out in NASCAR as well. What were your thoughts on the qualifying format?
It was a very exciting qualifying format. I know overall, it was just something where we got to see the drivers really do what they do the best, and that is try to lay down two fast laps. And especially the first one, that was going to be the first race. The second one, the second race. So even if in traditionally where it's two laps counted towards the same event, they know, okay, that first one's a throwaway lap. I can still come back for that second lap. This one was really good because we saw where essentially Connor Daly got the pole, but then Joseph Newgarden got the pole for the second race. So I thought it was a really fantastic trial by the IndyCar series.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be also, since NASCAR is not qualifying right now. I think like wherever the car, where like whoever sets the fastest lap in the previous race, that should be your starting spot for the next race. I think that would work out well. So until we return to qualifying over in the NASCAR side of things, but definitely in IndyCar with oval double headers, I think it worked out pretty well because I saw some drivers do really well on lap one, and then lap two was completely off. Like so, Alexander Rossi qualified towards the front, race one, and then second lap was horrible, and he started near the rear.
Yeah, he started near the rear, especially when it came down to what we saw with Friday's race. A lot of action going on that day. We saw essentially Newgard, he was up front, he was looking pretty strong. But then as we started going through the race, it was something becoming very clear that it was going to be a long green flag run, really hard for anybody that was struggling with handling and any other problems. But then that first caution came out with Will Power, bizarre event that occurred. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to Will Power on Friday night?
Oh yeah, that was a really bizarre incident. With Will Power, it seemed like something like happened with the wheel or whatever, and it just flew off the car. And we're very lucky that the tire did not go back under the track and potentially hit a driver in the head. And just glad that we have the aero screen on those cars now because never know what could have happened. With the tire flying off.
Yeah, with that tire flying off, it was a really scary incident that everyone was really grateful to see. Essentially, that aero screen came in and do the job. Now, speaking of that, we've seen Penske, especially leading up to this, pit stops just seem to be a problem for it. Will Power put himself in contention for wins, hasn't came through with it. How much do you think this has shaken the confidence in Will Power in his pit crew?
Oh, definitely. It hasn't been Penske perfect at all so far this season. We've seen a lot of pit road, mistakes on pit road, not just by Team Penske, but the entire field in general. And I'm wondering if any of if they're starting to feel a little pressure in the Team Penske has, especially Will Power because got Scott McLaughlin in the Supercar series, and it seems like at some point he'll make the move to IndyCar, and we don't know if Roger Penske is going to expand to four cars, like they used to, and if Will Power struggles, maybe he could end up getting replaced. It's something we don't know what's going to happen yet, but definitely the pressure is on.
Definitely the pressure is on Team Penske. I know a lot of people look at them as Penske perfect all the time. Now, after that incident with Will Power, as we were coming to the green flag, we saw definitely the scary moment of the weekend leading up until Sunday. But during that restart, which got waved off, Colton Herta, who was unaware that the restart had been called off,
Oh, and it seems like everything just froze there. I had no idea what Joe said, but he was talking. I'm sure. Yeah, we're talking about the scary crash between Colton Herta and Renus VK, and very as I mentioned earlier in the Tonight Show, the Arrow screen. It was definitely great that we have that now, because a year ago I can't imagine what could have possibly happened to Rena's VK. It seemed like the aero screen prevented the front nose of Colton Herta's car from entering the cockpit of Rena's VK, and and if that would have happened, it might have been a somber story that we were talking about. But fortunately, the aero screen. I believe the aero screen potentially saved Rena's VK's life right there. And when Colton Herta got in the area, that was very frightening, and luckily came back down to the ground. And great to see both drivers walk away from such a scary accident.
Yeah, it was very scary to see that accident occur. And you hit it really pretty much spot on, I think, with everything that the aero screen did do. And of course, Marcus Ericsson as well, too. Pieces of debris came really close to hitting him. Now, Saturday was essentially a very different story because after those two accidents, we saw Simon Pagenaud come from the back, dead last, to the front to get the win. He wasn't gonna. He was gonna try to go for it, get two in a row, but it wasn't gonna work out because Saturday was definitely a different story with Joseph Newgarden. Of course, he was on the pole and essentially dominated the race. The race saw everyone pick quickly this time compared to the Friday night race, where everybody was going, and then Takuma Sato used the undercut to really gain a lot of positions. Saturday night, a lot of teams took note of that, didn't allow that to happen. One of the big things we saw was Patricia O'Ward come up to second place and was gaining on Newgarden for a while. But a costly green flag pit stop saw O'Ward stall, and then an unsecured left rear tire upon his release cost a lot of time and essentially put him a lap down behind everyone else. Then the second caution. This is something definitely a lot of people were talking about. For the second race in a row, Ryan Hunter Ray, leaving pit road, has has issues with grip, slides, hits the inside wall. Once he hits that inside wall, it was becoming clear that this time, compared to Friday night, where he hit the wall, kept going, Saturday night, caution came out. He had significant damage that came to a stop in the back of the pit road. Now, after the cautions, it was clear Newgarden had control of the race, and he went on to score his first win of 2020 and Penske's second IndyCar win in a row. Is Team Penske back? Are they ready to challenge Chip Ganassi Racing?
Yeah, yes, it seems like Team Penske is finally starting to get everything under control so far this season, especially with Joseph Newgarden and Simon Pagenaud sweeping the weekend in Iowa. It seems like Will Power still has a little work to go though, but I'm sure that Will Power still has an opportunity to get going in 2020. Is not over yet for Will Power and his team to get everything under control. Yeah, and one team, not back 100% is Andretti Autosport. None of the drivers were real contenders for the win at all on Saturday. Zach Beach was the first driver to go a lap down, and thinking about Andretti Autosports, I'm wondering like what should their goals be for the next race at Mid Ohio? Like is a win in reach, or they just need to just get the team running well without any issues from flag to flag. And Scott Dixon currently leads Simon Pagenaud right now by 49 points in the driver's standings. Currently, there are 8 races left on the schedule, assuming there are no further cancellations. Yeah, and I'm wondering if Scott Dixon is going to still be in firm control of the championship, all the way through, or can Team Penske start moving forward? Joseph Newgar and Simon Pagenaud, and, Pato O'Ward's looking really good in the points. Like, is Scott Dixon going to have any trouble moving forward, or can somebody capitalize on that? And the next race for the NTT IndyCar Series is August 9th at Mid Ohio, a race where Scott Dixon won last year. It was a fantastic fight between him and his teammate Felix Rosenquist. And on August 9th, that event will be the last event before the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500. And it looks like that race is going to be full steam ahead. Yeah, and moving on to Formula One. Formula One arrived to the Hungaroring circuit for this weekend with the Hungarian Grand Prix on a non-doubleheader. It was a non-doubleheader event. However, after the first day of practice, attention shifted online to the news that developed. Multiple posts on social media about sexual harassment that women experience in the motorsport community were shared. Several posts from multiple people aimed at a journalist that specifically covered Formula One, and we will be following this developing news, and we will discuss it more in detail on Wednesday night during Grid Tonight. Yeah, and Sunday's race was another Mercedes front row, but 2 rows behind were a big surprise with Racing Point locking the second row and Ferrari the third row. Max Verstappen had a disappointing seventh starting spot, and teammates Alex Albon started in 13th. And the race didn't even get started, and Max Verstappen slid off off a damp course while on the intermediate tires and damaged the front wing and suspension. Max managed to get to the grid, and his team frantically worked on getting the car ready. Once the lights went out, Lewis Hamilton had a great start, but Bottas and Perez were on the inside lane and struggled and lost multiple positions. And it was definitely some interesting strategy from Haas. Both cars started in the pit lane on slick tires, and once the track started drying, all the teams brought their cars to the pit lane and changed the slicks, allowing Haas to claim to third and fourth. Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas climbed their way from the mid pack to second and third position, but the best battle was between Ferrari, Racing Point, McLaren, and Renault. The Hungaroring is notoriously hard for passing, so most of the passes were done on pit road. At the end, it was all Lewis Hamilton leading Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas to the podium. Haas F1 was given a 10-second time penalty, resulting in only Kevin Magnussen finishing in the top 10. So starting with Haas, why were they penalized 10 seconds?
Well, part of the reason why I penalized 10 seconds was because essentially what we saw, and I'm on a backup computer right now, um, Haas went into pit road prior to the start of the race. Once they went in the race track to line up on the grid, they were on wet tires. So with those wet tires, that means that were the tires were going to start the race on. They are allowed the drivers to come in and change tires before the start of the race and start from the pit lane. But that's the driver's call, not the call of the team. And that's what the team did, essentially. Gunther almost essentially said it on the air, and that's why they were given the second penalty.
Yeah, yeah, and Lewis Hamilton has taken the points lead when 3 races into the season. Was today a display of how dominant Mercedes are, or just a product of racing at the Hungaroring?
Definitely, I think this is a little bit of both. The Hungarian ring is definitely a challenging track where you could see a lot of the teams, they didn't have the setup going the right way. And in the past, we've seen this track been a place where Fernando Alonso with a slower Renault will get his first win. He even lapped down Michael Schumacher and on way to it. So it's very hard to get passes and to just get that handle. Add in the damp racetrack makes it more challenging. But that said, you can't discredit Mercedes. They are the top of the class. They are looking really good. They're going to be very hard to beat. And I see this a little bit of both between Mercedes and the Hungarian ring being really tricky to race at.
Yeah, and only 5 cars finished on the lead lap today. 2 Mercedes, 2 Red Bulls, and Lance Stroll in the Racing Point in fourth. Do you think Racing Point can clear third place?
I think so. I think Racing Point is definitely one of the teams where, with everything they got going, they are the third place team to beat. One of the big things we saw, Red Bull, they're still a little bit behind the ball when it comes to Mercedes. Mercedes, the top of the class. Ferrari, they put in some good efforts today, but of course we had damp conditions. We had change in track conditions as the track was drying out. That's where you saw the experience from Vettel's really come into play. He finished quite a ways ahead of Charles Leclerc. On top of that, the rest of the best, as we say with Ferrari, Renault, McLaren, I don't see them really up there. And especially what we saw with Lance Stroll, he's showing that Racing Point is definitely a solid third place team.
Yeah, Sergio Perez finished seventh. It was, his biggest competition, his teammate. I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry, got lost. Got a little tongue tied there. Yeah, Sergio Perez finished seventh. Do you think his biggest competition, is it going to be his teammate, or is it going to be like staying ahead of Ferrari, McLaren, or Renault?
Definitely with everything that has happened, I think one of his biggest competition is his teammate. It's no secret, especially that it looks like we're gonna see Sebastian Vettel in that car next year. So the question is, where's Perez gonna end up? If we do see Perez going to another team, he wants to put on the best performances he can to show, hey, I could win races, I could lead your team. So today was a really tough day for him. Starting the second row, fall back into the pack, was just way out there compared to Lance Stroll, got fourth place. So I definitely think Perez needs to focus on putting together good races and finishing ahead of his teammate.
Yeah, and F1 has the next weekend off before we begin the Silverstone doubleheader.
Definitely, Silverstone doubleheader is going to be really exciting. One of the big things, we had a really hot day in Texas today, and that's essentially where we saw NASCAR run their race. With NASCAR, we definitely saw a really interesting race today where the big thing we saw was the heat was a big issue, over 100 degrees. So, of course, that's going to mean a hot track, tire grip is going to be really hard for everybody. And overall, we sort of saw that essentially with a lot of long green flag runs, a lot of single file. We did see some passes here or there, especially from the faster teams, such as Aric Almirola. He fell in the back with a pit road penalty, but he came back towards the front. That's all changed though, especially after the first two stages. Ryan Blaney had won the first two stages without an issue. But then we had the big crash in the trial. It collected Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and many more brought out the red flag even. Now, during the red flag, there was something interesting. And it brought out essentially people on social media to notice this. There was a lot of race fans, of course, in attendance. Social distancing was in place. But during that red flag, they knows many were not observing the social distancing nor wearing a mask as they all rushed towards the front to get a picture of their favorite race car driver stopped on the front stretch during the red flag. Kobe, how should we be concerned about NASCAR social distancing policy not being enforced, especially in the grandstand?
Oh, Joe, that definitely was. I'm be honest, and be perfectly blunt. That was not a good look at all. Seeing all those fans lined up along the grand, yeah, lined up along the fence when they stopped the race with a red flag. I understand that the fans are really excited to get back, to the track and all of that, and get a photo of their favorite driver or whatever. I totally get that, but we're we're still living in a global pandemic, and lots of people are getting sick. Some sicker than others, and unfortunately, some are dying. And Texas right now is one of the hotspot states in the United States. NASCAR race at Texas Motor Speedway. Right in the middle of the hotspot, and it was really disappointing to see race fans out there not socially distancing and not wearing a mask. They were lined up in clusters, and that was something that I feel like we didn't need to see at all. And I'm just and obviously I'm not trying to criticize them. Everybody has a right to do whatever they want. I just like I'm just a caring person, and I don't want to see anybody get seriously sick or you know or the worst case scenario happen.
I would totally agree with you. Everyone is very concerned about health, safety, especially NASCAR has said they want to come back in a safe manner. Last thing NASCAR will want, or anybody, is a spike in cases and then it all traces back to the event. I know a lot of folks on social media, not just race fans, but even people within the industry were commenting, very concerned and very critical about what they were seeing occurring at Texas Motor Speedway. With that said, once the racing did resume, we had two more cautions. One was for a crash with Ty Dillon and William Byron. Byron did make it to pit road, but was pushed to the garage and was done for the day. Why does it seem the 24 car just can't get a break and just put together a good finish?
To be honest, I can't really explain that one at all. It just seems like that there's a lot of just bad luck going on in the 24 camp. I have no idea what they need to do, but it, if they keep having days like this, they're not gonna be in the playoffs at all.
Yeah, if they have more bad days like this, they're not going to be in the playoffs. And in fact, their playoffs chances did take a big hit today because at the end, we saw, thanks to another late caution and pit road strategy, where we saw some teams take 2 tires, 4 tires, or no tires, stay out. The Richard Childress Racing team had both their cars in the front row. Austin Dillon held off the field for 3 late restarts to become the 10th different winner of the NASCAR Cup season. Tyler Reddick came home second to bring home a 1-2 finish for RCR. The race definitely had two distinctive characteristics. The first two stages, we saw a lot of green flag racing, but then the cautions in the third stages really changed the strategy, really changed the dynamic of the race. Overall, how would you say the race played out?
Yeah, your race definitely played out a lot differently than I expected. I thought we were gonna see Ryan Blaney in victory lane. Like halfway through the race, I had no idea that RCR was going to finish 1-2 today. Yeah, it's just seeing these new winners. It's definitely good for the sport. Last week Cole Custer won his first race at Kentucky, and then today Austin Dillon won at Texas. Yeah, those are two drivers that most people wouldn't really expect to win, and since tires weren't really a major issue at all today, I definitely think that RCR played the strategy game right to get their drivers up front, because with tires not making any, with tires, not playing a major factor at all, and then having the clean air and all of that. I think RCR definitely capitalized today.
Definitely, it seemed RCR really capitalized, make the best of everything, get that win. Austin Dillon is now in the playoffs. He's got to be super excited. They said 88 races since his last win. And this has to be a big morale boost for Tyler Reddick, too. I see him definitely carrying this momentum for the remaining 8 races ahead.
Can you repeat that, Joe? I didn't quite hear you there.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah, so I definitely see where with Tyler Reddick, the racing coming ahead, he's going to be doing really good. He got that momentum from the finish. It's going to be one of those instances where I think for the next 8 races, Tyler Reddick, I think, is going to be a big favorite to win and get in the playoffs. If he doesn't get a win, for sure, I see him earning the points, using that momentum to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely think it would not surprise me within the next 8 races if we see Tyler Reddick go to victory lane. I thought Tyler Reddick was going to be the first rookie to go to victory lane, and Cole Custer shocked us last weekend at Kentucky. But yeah, it would not surprise me if Tyler Reddick's able to get the number 8 car in the victory lane, so RCR can have two of his Cup teams win this season.
Yeah, if he gets in the victory lane, that's going to be super exciting. Of course, we got more NASCAR coming up later in the program as well. And of course, there's going to be more NASCAR racing coming up in the weekend. But definitely, we still got a lot of racing, including the Australian Supercar Series, which we saw them run a triple header this weekend.
Oh it was definitely a crazy triple header weekend for the Virgin Australia Supercar Series at Sydney Motorsports Park. And last time here, Scott McLaughlin won 2 out of 3 races, and Nick Percat won the second race that weekend. Yeah, Scott McLaughlin used the tire strategy to win the first race that was held under the lights, and the second race, Nick Percat from third used soft tires to score a dominating win, 9 seconds ahead of second place Fabian Coulthard, and Scott McLaughlin, and a photo finish got third, just ahead of James Courtney. And the third race was a battle between teams that had soft tires left and produced even more great racing. Tickford Racing's Jack LeBrock scored his first career supercars win, holding off Andre Humgartner, and Tickford Racing's Jack. Yeah, it was definitely a great win for Jack LeBrock. And this weekend highlighted a new mix of a new mix of tire compound rule. How does it work? And is this something? And is this something that other series should use?
So the way the rule work that the supercars have introduced, they introduce two different compounds, a soft tire and a hard tire. Very similar to what we see in Formula One, IndyCar. The softer tire, better grip, shorter life. The harder tire, longer life, a little less grip, but is more durable. It will go further. What the Supercar Series done is also make it where essentially at the start of the race weekend, 3 sets of hard tires, 2 sets of soft tires. You got to use those tires throughout all 3 races. This wasn't like IndyCar where you, for example, Road America, you have to use each different compound in the race. So this allowed teams for a strategy where one race they may just do only soft tires, another race soft tire, hard tire, or just all hard tires. So it's really interesting because we saw the strategy come into play, especially when Jack won. He had the soft tires left where drivers like the Red Bull racing team, Shane Van Gisberger, he only had hard tires left. We saw other drivers, they tried to go with the hard tires. That didn't seem to work out. So it was definitely something where it really was interesting, the dynamic. And I think, especially for Indy cars, if they want to do something similar like this, because they already have double headers, the 2 different tire compounds, I see this as a potential idea that they could use just to make the strategy a little harder for all the teams.
Yeah, and Scott McLaughlin he oh my gosh, getting so tongue tied today. Scott McLaughlin is the grid ranking leader entering the weekend. How much does the 14th place finish hurt him?
So the 14th place finish will essentially cost him some points in the grid ranking. Of course, the grid ranking, they want to look at top 10 finishes, especially podium finishes. So he missed out on those points finishing outside the top 10. With that said, though, he still got the most points out of any supercar racer out there at Sydney Motorsport Park. We saw Scott Dixon, he got a second place, but then he also finished very low in the top 10. So there's a very good chance that we're going to see, I think Scott McLaughlin will still be in the lead of the grid ranking. Once we see Scott McLaughlin, the grid ranking, which will be released later tonight, I think we'll see he's still going to be first place and leading the points.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see how the grid ranking shapes up over the next few weeks.
Indeed, it's going to be really interesting to see how everything shapes up. Now, one of the events that took place that the grid ranking doesn't score was the NASCAR All-Star Race. The NASCAR All-Star Race, it had around 20,000 fans. It was the largest event since the global pandemic started. And boy, was the crowd treated to a pretty memorable All-Star Race. It took place, of course, at Bristol Motor Speedway, outside Charlotte Motor Speedway for only the second time. The first time it happened, Atlanta Motor Speedway, and Bill Elliott won that race. The big talk after the race weekend, though, has to be, of course, the drama between Bubba Wallace and Michael McDowell. And that really has the fans split. Now, for all those that missed it, coming out of turn 2, Bubba had used a little bit of his rear bumper to get around Michael McDowell. Of course, we're at Bristol. That's anticipated. But then the discussion is when McDowell clipped Bubba's right rear, that sent the 43 Chevrolet hard into the turn 3 wall. Now, Bubba, of course, being upset at McDowell, called him a joke and left the front bumper at the 34 team hauler. What are your thoughts on everything that happened between the two drivers?
It was just an unfortunate incident that happened between Michael McDowell and Bubba Wallace there. I'm not gonna be one to speculate, that McDowell wrecked him on purpose or whatever. But I definitely think that Bubba Wallace had every right to be upset there because it seems like Bubba was going to he was going to easily get the fan vote to get into the All Star race, and unfortunately you know, it just wasn't in the cards. You know, he had the wrecked car, and I definitely think that Bubba had every right to be upset there with Michael McDowell. I'm sure everybody else, you know, race on a short track like that, it would definitely, you know, make them mad.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, especially short tracks, short tempers. We talked about on Grid Tonight pre-race edition, $1 million on the line. What will you do for it? And we definitely saw in the open, drivers were more physical. Some would even say more physical than the drivers in the All Star race. I think this was just really unfortunately a racing incident. Of course, considering the circumstances, NASCAR is getting a lot more media attention, especially Bubba Wallace. A lot of fans, of course, are going to be split on who was at fault, but this was just, I think, very hard racing. No points on the line, trying to get into that All Star race because that was the only one we saw. Of course, we did see even more cautions up ahead, and one of the surprising things, of course, considering what transpired today, we saw Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick did not make it to the All Star race. Now, for next year, Austin Dillon, he knows he is going to be in that All Star race. No announcement yet about what's going to happen with the All Star race next year, but definitely, I know a lot of fans were very excited for this All Star race weekend. We had the underglow lights, we had the racing at Bristol. To open, we saw essentially Eric Almirola, William Byron win stages. Matt Bedenabedo won the All Star race. Clint Boyer took home the fan vote. But the All Star race itself seemed to be a lot more tame. We didn't have the same kind of action a lot of people anticipated, and definitely not the same kind we saw in the Open. Do you think fans were expecting a little bit too much from the All Star race at Bristol?
Oh, definitely. And I think for myself personally, I expected too much. I saw somebody on Twitter said that you know, before the race, that this All Star race is going to be our generation's version of, you know, of the one hot night. And you know, in the All Star race, it was definitely way off from one hot night. Yeah, yeah. I thought, and I saw, you know, fans as well. They were. It seemed like, you know, everybody was thought this was going to be like the greatest All Star race in NASCAR history, because, you know, it's Bristol. You know, you think you're going to see, you know, lots of contact, the bump and run, tempers flaring. You know, maybe some drivers, you know, who like went after one another after the race. When they announced that the All Star race was moving to Bristol, myself, I thought it was going to be like, oh yes, it's going to be a turn four bump and run with somebody end up, you know, the person who's leading in turn four, you coming toward the checker flag, is going to end up wrecked, and the driver second is going to win the race. That's what I thought. You know, this All Star race was going to be about, and you know, and on a lot of contact. I mean, also race. It wasn't a bad race. It's still it certainly wasn't a great race, but it was a good race. But in my book, it was one of the more tame Bristol races.
It was definitely a very tame Bristol race. Seemed like it was maybe just with everyone a little bit too far spread out. Of course, you didn't have the full 40 cars where everyone's trying not to go fall a lap down. With 20 cars, there's a lot more space. Still, there was that sense of urgency, but I don't think it was the same traditional urgency we would see at a normal race in Bristol. So definitely, I think it was a little bit fans expecting a lot more. We didn't get it, but still, there was the other things I think a lot of fans were excited about, and I feel like the reactions were mixed, particularly with the underglows. We saw last year during the championship week how Chip Ganassi Racing had underglows all around the car. People were anticipating something like that. NASCAR started promoting it. We knew there was going to be a new number placement. The numbers were slid to the back, more room for sponsors. And then at the end, it seems like when it came to it, the underglow, it was only in the very back bumper area. It looks like it was probably around the fuel tank area because it was only the back glowing and was based on your brand. So you only had three different colors. And the number placement there seemed to get mixed reviews. What are your thoughts on the new number placement and the underglows that we saw at Bristol?
I'm probably gonna sound like an older person when I say this, but I'm actually fine with the number placement for the All Star race. But you know, I don't really care to see that ever again. I like the numbers just the way they are. You know, normally right now, I definitely don't want to see the numbers the way they were during the All Star race, and I think the underglow definitely could use some work. I think, you know, instead of being specific to the manufacturer, I think the underglow would have been more effective if there was, you know, way to add a little bit more to it, maybe a little bit brighter, and you know, match the paint scheme a lot. You know, to match the paint scheme, I felt like that the underglow would have been a lot more effective. I mean, it was still cool to try out and everything, but All Star Race is becoming an experimental race, and kudos to NASCAR for trying out something new.
Definitely kudos to NASCAR trying something new. It was experimental, and of course, the All Star Race is the perfect place to do that. You wouldn't want to do that at the Daytona 500. You wouldn't want to try that at another NASCAR Cup Series race where points are on the line, and somebody could criticize NASCAR for costing them valuable points. Definitely, when it came from me, I think a lot of folks I would like to see maybe the underglows expand more to just the back. Of course, the placement that is something that has to be considered. Don't want to put it somewhere where it could fall off, become an issue on the track. It might be just something where, well, we do this for fun once a year. Maybe they could expand a little bit more. It'll be interesting for myself. The numbers, I feel like some teams really did get it right with their look of the car, and then there were just some teams where it just felt like they missed the mark. I know a lot of folks were a bit cringy when they saw William Byron's paint scheme. So definitely, I think it's something where being the experimental race, this was the place where NASCAR could try it and go from there. So definitely, it was a pretty exciting race weekend of NASCAR with the All Star race, Texas Motor Speedway. Overall, I say it was a pretty good race weekend for NASCAR. One of the things I know a lot of people were excited about was the return of MotoGP.
Yeah, the much anticipated return of MotoGP didn't disappoint, and Marc Marquez, the defending champion and two-time grid ranking champion, appeared to be the rider to beat. A scary crash occurred in the morning warm-up when Cal Crutchlow lost the front end in turn 8 of the Jerez circuit, and Cal slid through the gravel. Yeah, and he ended up suffering a fractured left wrist and a mild concussion, and he was flown to Bars for surgery and missed the race. The race, I said that the race started with Marquez and Maverick Vinales up front, and on lap 4, Marquez went off track and through the gravel, but continued on, falling back to 16th. And Vinales had to lead until lap 9, struggling with front tire grip, and then Fabio took the lead in his Yamaha and set sail for his first career win. Yeah, Marquez had climbed up to 16th to a potential Marquez had climbed up from 16th to a potential podium finish with 3 laps to go, and that all changed. Marquez high-sided his Honda, been tossed up and ahead of his Honda Moto. Yeah, Marquez, he ended up getting injured, and then Dr. Mirror stated that his arm took from the tire of his sliding motorcycle, fractured the yeah, he had a fracture, and Marquez did get up but was slow, and he was transported to Barcelona for surgery. It is very unlikely that he will miss next weekend's race at the Jerez circuit. Yeah, and he's the defending grid ranking world champion. What happens if he misses more races?
Definitely, if he misses more races, it will be not beneficial for him in trying to defend the grid ranking world championship. Of course, the grid ranking, it looks at the number of races a series competes. So right now, only one race. He has completed that one race. He finished outside the top 10, so he's not going to get any of the points. So that's already going to hurt him. The other component, though, the grid ranking looks at races attempted. This is very important because it goes by if you are in the entry list or intending to try to qualify for that event. So in the case, if Marc Marquez is not going to race next week and they get a replacement rider, it doesn't count as a failed attempt to enter the race. This is very important because last year we saw Scott McLaughlin. He had two did not starts, one in Melbourne when he got crashed prior to the race, and the same in the Gold Coast. At both events, he was intending to race. He didn't get the start, but since he had the intention to do the races and essentially was qualifying for those races, he got charged with those two did not starts, which really hurt him. Marc Marquez, if we know early on that they got a replacement driver or the team does not try to enter because he's out, it won't hurt him too much in the grid ranking.
Yeah, so how wide open is the championship now for everyone at MotoGP?
It is very much wide open, especially when you look at the top 3 finishers. We have Fabio Quintero, first career MotoGP win. Super exciting day for him. I know Mark Vinales, a lot of folks see him as the biggest threat to Marc Marquez's championship. He's now second place, and Mark Marquez might miss another race. There's even discussion he might miss a second or a third race. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And Andrea Dovizioso, who the last few years have finished second place, he's third place. Mark Marquez, he's out of the picture right now. So easily those two, I could see them being championship threat. Don't count on Valentino Rossi. Yamahas, they have to start to improve, especially for him. And Fabio Quintero, you never know with him. If he could continue this momentum, get more podiums, one of the big things we saw, Mark Marquez has been very consistent and very dominating in this series. While, especially last year, Andrea didn't exactly have that. So Mark Marquez recorded his championship way early on. So I think it could be really wide open. And depending on how crazy it gets, you may see if Mark Marquez only missed one race or two, he could still get a chance. There's only 12 races left. It's just a matter of how the rest of the season plays out and how the competition all fares.
Yeah, and be sure to follow the Great Ranking and World Motorsport League. Visit greatranking.com to visit our visit our website. Follow us on social media, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Definitely very exciting race weekend. I know, Kobe, what stands out? Which moment stands out this weekend from all the races?
Connor Daly and Carlin Racing. It's absolutely amazing. Since Connor Daly started filling in for Max Chilton on the ovals last year with Carlin Racing, that program has improved by a lot. Carlin Racing went from a team that was just at the very back of the grid, just struggling to keep up, and now Connor Daly has helped turn their IndyCar program in the right direction. And it was amazing, with Connor scoring the pole for Carlin in race one, and then qualifying third for race two, and ended up getting a great finish in race one. Unfortunately, the strategy just didn't play out for race two, but it appears that Connor Daly is really helping Carlin Racing, get their IndyCar program improving and headed in the right direction for the future. And it's going to be interesting to see like what happens moving forward with Carlin Racing. Like is Connor Daly is actually going to be running the full season this year, but with two different teams, with Ed Carpenter Racing on the road courses in the Indy 500, and then Carlin on on the ovals that Max Chilton doesn't race at. And it's gonna be interesting to see, since it seems like Connor is really growing that Carlin program. Is Connor going to have an opportunity to run full time with one team? Because it seems like Carlin, and Connor Daly definitely might be a good fit moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like that was a big Connor Daly. Wonderful weekend out there. I think he's definitely got big, great things up ahead coming up for him. For me, the standout moment, I think definitely has to come, especially at the IndyCar race with Colton Herta, Rinus VK accident. We saw that accident take place, and that got a lot of people buzzing. There was even video from somebody in the stands that went around social media. Every time we have safety advancement, it seems like it doesn't take long for that new safety advancement to get tested. One of the big things, of course, the aero screen, which has the halo in there as well. That tire came over essentially Will Power's car. A lot of people credit the aero screen for being there, and Will Power credit the aero screen for being there. Colton Herta, Rinus VK, we saw the damage to Rinus VK's aero screen. The nose of Colton's car could have easily gotten into that cockpit. Who knows what would have happened? But we thankfully had the safety advancements there. The debris that was flying up, we saw one piece that flew straight down and hit Marcus Ericsson's car. We know this is very similar to what happened to Justin Wilson. Justin Wilson was hit by flying debris that came down and hit him in the helmet. While the debris wasn't heading towards his helmet, it was still very close, brought back a lot of those memories, and it really, I think, emphasized on the advancements that safety has brought into IndyCar. And that's why we're just so happy to see that those IndyCar aero screens are being passing with flying cars as they're being tested. I think the other thing that does really stand out, I think, has to be a MotoGP. That was a really great race. I think a lot of folks are very concerned, as well as us here at the grid. Definitely hoping for a speedy recovery for Cal Crutchlow and Mark Marquez as well. Racing, of course, always has its risk. Never want to see a driver, another competitor get hurt. And definitely we heard from the top three finishers who are essentially now going to have a really good shot at championship. All three of them and everyone else have been expressing their concern for the health of Mark Marquez. Now, everybody, thank you for watching today. I know a little bit of technical difficulties on my part. Apologize on that, but we thank you for watching us. We're up to 480 followers on Twitter. Please be sure to tell your friends to subscribe. Exciting news I know Kobe and I were excited to share. We hit over 100 likes on our Facebook. So we're really excited about that. Please encourage your fellow friends and family members to enjoy car racing to follow us. Cody, can you tell us a little bit about our new upcoming program that we're going to be announcing?
Oh yeah, yeah, we're gonna be doing a special program called Life on the Grid soon, and be sure to keep watch out for that on Life on the Grid. We're gonna be conducting an interview with people that work all across the motorsports industry, whether it's stock cars, open wheels, sports cars, whatever. We're gonna be out there seeking those interviews and bring those to you here on the Grid Network. And our first guest is gonna be Mr. Brett Winningham, a motorsports journalist from Speedway Digest. We're definitely excited to have Brett come on and share what it's been like for him working as a motorsports journalist in the motorsports industry.
Definitely, we're super excited to have Brett on the program. It's going to be a very exciting program. Life on the Grid. We'll be posting more on our social media network. And of course, right here on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe and that bell notification for future updates. And thank you for joining us. We appreciate your viewership and your support. You all have a wonderful evening.